Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I want to apologize for missing last Monday and not posting last Saturday, but it was Thanksgiving and I had a lot of work that I also had to do, so I got a little caught up. But here we are to do my November 2024 wrap up. I cannot believe it, we are 11 months through the year. I've beat my reading goal of getting to 50 books this year, so I'm very, very happy. I'd like to see how many I can get to. I don't think I'll get to 60 in the last month, but we can always hope. Anyhow, I got through 6 books this month. A lot of them are new releases. Others are very, very well-loved books that I probably should have read ages ago. We're going to talk about all of them. My ratings are all over the place. I've got books I really didn't like. I have a 5-star read that I think is actually going to make it into my top 10 of the year. So definitely a really, really solid month. So let's dive in. And first up, we're going to talk about How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive by Craig DeLuey. Now, I do have a full-length, in-depth review on this novel, along with every other book today, except for the very, very last one. It was more of a novella, and I don't have, I think, enough of an opinion on it to warrant a full-length video. But for all of the other books, I do definitely check those out, because I'm going to go through these pretty quickly today, so I'm not super repetitive. But this is Craig DeLuey's latest release. I believe this came out in August. You might know Craig DeLuey from his most well-known novel, Episode 13. I did read that earlier this year, and I really enjoyed the first half of the novel, and then felt the second half kind of went all over the place, but it intrigued me enough to pick up this book. I'm going to read the back really quickly. So it says, Max Mari should be on top of the world. He's a famous horror director. Actors love him. Hollywood needs him. He's making money hand over fist. But it's the 80s, and he's directing cheap slashers for audiences who crave only more blood, not real art, not real horror. And Max's slimy producer refuses to fund any of his new ideas. Sally Priest dreams of being the final girl. She knows she's got what it takes to score the lead role, even if she's been cast in only small parts so far. When Sally meets Max at his latest rap party, she sets out to impress him and prove her scream queen prowess. But when Max discovers an old camera that filmed a very real Hollywood horror, he knows that he has to use this camera for his next movie. The only problems are that it came with a cryptic warning, and sometimes it howls. By the time Max discovers the true evil lying within, he's already dead set on finishing the scariest movie ever put to film. And like it or not, it's Sally's time to shine as the final girl. So, I'm just going to go right out and say that this was a 3-star read for me. I think I enjoy Craig DeLuey's writing style. I don't think I love his characters, especially his morally gray villains. And I felt like this novel had one of those, as did Episode 13. And one of the other things that I think both novels kind of suffered from is creating character development halfway through the story, where the characters feel very much figured out for the first half, and then he introduces these different changes to those characters halfway through to kind of push the narrative forward. Another thing that I felt with this novel is that this book really is kind of about how to make a horror movie. I think the and survive portion is kind of secondary. This is kind of a love letter to 80s filmmaking, especially the kind of like indie slasher film that then boomed into large studios giving the go-ahead to like 5 million sequels in the late 70s, early 80s. I love the film history that went into this. I love how much time and attention to detail Craig DeLuey put into talking about the film history, but I do think that his way of talking about the industry took away from the actual horror aspect of this novel. I didn't really find it scary. I didn't really connect with a lot of the characters, but it was still fun to read in the sense that I was reading about that industry, which is something I'm very interested in. In a sense, the way that he took a lot of attention to detail when writing about like ghost hunting shows for the first half of his story. I think he lays the groundwork for really cool ideas and then kind of comes out of left field with these odd characterizations and bizarre concepts that kind of borderline like these interdimensional realms, and he loses sight of what he wants to do with his stories. And I've now seen that in 2 of his novels. while very, very different in story, they do still kind of have those core flaws with them. So if you're interested in the horror movie industry, definitely worth a read, but don't look at this to be something that's going to like really, really scare you, and it's not super groundbreaking. So yeah, 3 stars. Okay, next up. I finally read Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell, which so many people on this channel told me to read. I'm very happy that I read it. Again, I have a very long in-depth review on this book. This is, as many of you probably know, a book that is based off of a No Sleep post. This was a creepypasta that became this full-length novel. I really truly believe the first half of this novel is one of the scariest things I have ever read in book form. It really unnerved me. It really unsettled me. Unfortunately, at about the halfway point, it started to just become extremely repetitive, and kind of just like, you could tell Blackwell didn't know where he wanted to go with the story. So it just kind of lost all of the build up and steam that it had. And I almost wish that the book had only been about half the length and left on very vague open-endedness, because I think that actually would have been scarier. The more he tried to make all of the supernatural elements fit, the harder it was for me to buy it, and the more plot holes that I found. And I just do not buy or understand the ending. In my video, I really go on this large rant kind of about my qualms with this book, but I will say the first half is downright terrifying, and this book is worth reading for that alone. I'm going to read the back of the book. A romantic cabin getaway doesn't go exactly as planned. High up on the windswept cliffs of Pale Peak, Faye and Felix celebrate their new engagement, but soon a chorus of ghastly noises erupts from the nearby woods. The screams of animals, the cries of children, and the mad babble of 100 mournful voices. A dark figure looms near the windows in the dead of night, whispering to Faye. As the weather turns deadly, Felix discovers that his terrified fiancée isn't mumbling in her sleep. She's whispering back. Yeah, so this book, I will say, has convinced me to start reading more of the creepypastas that have been turned into novels. I did read Pen Pal, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and I'm currently reading We Used to Live Here, which just came out. But I really like the kind of creepypasta angles that people take. I love the idea that this is written kind of from like a first-person perspective, kind of in the realm and gaze that it's trying to convince the reader that it really, really happened. And again, this first chapter and the first like 100 or so pages, terrifying. I was reading alone in my apartment. My husband was on a business trip, and it scared me being alone, and that doesn't happen too often with novels. So I do think he knows how to create an amazing atmosphere. This book I do think is incredibly atmospheric. I do have a whole video on atmospheric novels. So I think this really checked off a lot of boxes for me of what I love in a horror novel, but it also really fell flat in that second half, unfortunately. But still a 4-star read. Still wouldn't want to discourage people from reading it because the first half is so well done. Okay, so next up, I finally read Nick Cutter. This is The Queen. This is his latest release. Most people probably know Nick Cutter for Raiding the Troop and the Deep, which are 2 novels that I refuse to read because of the gratuitous amounts of prolonged animal cruelty that he is known for writing. I read this book because I am interested in reading Nick Cutter, even though I am against reading animal cruelty in books. It's something that doesn't make me happy. It's something I don't enjoy. That's why I don't like it. But The Queen doesn't have it. So I did read it. I went in with high hopes, hoping that I would actually really like Nick Cutter's writing style and that it would prove me wrong, and not just kind of be shock value and gross out, just gross out. Yeah, and unfortunately I didn't love it. I'm gonna read the inside flap. One sunny morning in June, Margaret Carpenter wakes up to find a new iPhone on her doorstep. She switches it on and is greeted by a text from her best friend, Charity Atwater. The problem is, Charity's been missing for over a month. Most people in town, even the police, think she's dead. Margaret and Charity have been lifelong friends. They share everything, know the most intimate details about each other, except for the destructive secret hidden from them both. A secret that will trigger a chain of events ending in tragedy, bloodshed, and death. And now Charity wants Margaret to know her story, the real story. In a narrative that takes place over one feverish day, Margaret follows a series of increasingly disquieting breadcrumbs as she forges deeper into the mystery of her best friend, a person she never truly knew at all. Okay. This book is very, 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 very heavy on the insect horror. It's very heavy on body horror. It's very heavy on, again, that gross out factor. None of that really bothered me in this book. I really don't love body horror, but if body horror is done well and it is written well and it is in a compelling story, I'm not going to sit there and be like, I didn't like that, because I don't like body horror because it freaks me out, it grosses me out. That's what horror does. What I didn't like about the story is I found the characters to be, for the most part, extremely flat or unlikable. I found many, many plot holes. I found motivations very jarring. I found a lot of characters just there to push the plot forward. And I didn't like the overall message of this book. I might be missing it completely, but it does seem to be very apologetic to somebody who commits pretty blatant assaults, and then kind of makes the victims look like the bad guy. And I don't love that angle. I really, really don't like it. It has this like weird lens of wannabe feminism, but just misses the mark entirely. And Nick Cutter's voice as like a man in his like 40s writing teenage Gen Z girls is strange. It's just very, very strange. And I think it's weird that like in Nick Cutter's mind, like everybody's a YouTuber or like an influencer. I mean, like I'm a YouTuber, but like almost every character in this is like a massive TikTok influencer. Like all of like the popular kids, like he's just constantly talking about that. And I'm like, I don't know if that's like real life, but I don't know. It just felt very disconnected and I didn't love it. So this was a 3-star read for me because I didn't hate it by any means. I definitely did not hate it, but there was a lot of things that didn't work for me, mainly the second half of the novel, where I felt there was a lot of groundwork laid down and then none of it really mattered in the end. And I'm still just not quite sure what the ending was or what it meant. So happy I finally read Nick Cutter. I don't know if I'll read his work again. Somebody said that Little Heaven also doesn't have animal cruelty. Let me know in the comments down below if that's true, because I will give him another chance. I know that The Troop, The Deep, and The Handyman Method do, so I don't want to touch those. I really don't like giving an author only one chance, so let me know about Little Heaven. Because yeah, I don't want to just base my opinion on Nick Cutter on these things, but I definitely didn't love that novel by any means. Okay, next up. Thank you guys so much for convincing me to read this. This is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. This book is amazing. This was a creepypasta that was released in like a serialization on Reddit's No Sleep, and then was like GoFundMe'd to become this novel. This came out in 2012. I can't believe I've never read it before. This book is so creepy and so well done and so shocking, and I just can't stop thinking about it. I read so many fan theories immediately after finishing this book. For like 2 hours I did like a deep dive on fan theories trying to figure it out, and I have a whole video going into my personal thoughts and what fan theories I really liked about this. I'm gonna read the back. So it says, in an attempt to make sense of his own mysterious and unsettling childhood memories, a man begins to reconstruct his past. As the games and adventures of his youth become engulfed by a larger story, he finds that it forms a tapestry of unbelievable horror that he never could have expected. Each chapter completes a different piece of the puzzle for both you and the narrator, and by the end of it all, you will wish that you could forget what he never knew. Yeah, I really don't want to say too much on this book, because I kind of went in just knowing that it was about a kid in kindergarten who has a strange pen pal, and that pen pal kind of stays with him through most of his childhood and young adult life in various sinister ways. And I want to leave it at that because I think that's a good way to frame this book, but this book is scary. It is really unsettling. It is really, really upsetting. The ending tore my heart out, and this book had a way of, I understand why each chapter originally started as a short story that was connected. It's got a very formulaic structure where it is consistently revealing pieces of the puzzle, but kind of leaving you not on, I wouldn't say a cliffhanger, but a large revelation that makes the rest of the story and the rest of the chapters that much more sinister and that much more depraved and that much more unsettling. And I absolutely adored the structure of this book, and it made me think. It stuck with me. It was, again, just wildly depressing. And I think it was absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for recommending that I read this. Again, if you want my full thoughts on this, definitely check out my full-length video. I really go into a lot of detail about it, but I do think this is a book that you should go into blind, because it really just catches you off guard with the directions that it takes. And I adored it. I adored it. I adored it. Slight trigger warning. There is a implied unfortunate end to an animal. I didn't find it difficult to read because it's all off screen, but it is implied, so just so you know, that does happen. But yeah, this book was overall incredible, and I'm so thankful that I read it. Alright, next up we're gonna go in with Evil in Me by Brom. Yeah, okay. Brom is one of those authors that, and I get a lot of hate on my videos when I talk about him, that I wish I loved, but I don't. And I keep reading his novels because, I like how beautiful they are, and I like the visual journeys that I get to go on with his art, side by side with the story. Like, his illustrations are just, like, crazy gorgeous. But I find I find his, main characters, to be copy and pasted archetypes, and I find his plots to be kind of regurgitations of everything else that he's done. Everything feels very formulaic, and I just can never really connect fully with the stories. I always think they start off much stronger in the first half than their conclusions, and I kind of feel like Brom tends to lose his way a bit. This is now the third book that I've read from Brom. I read Krampus, and I've read Slewfoot, which I know a lot of people love. But to me, they all kind of feel very much the same, and they start to blur together in, like, this exact same kind of plot, concept, overall message, and characters. I'm going to read the inside flap of this one. So this says, aspiring musician Ruby Tucker has had enough of her small rural town and dysfunctional family. But a falling out with her best friend bandmate has killed her dreams of escaping and making it big in the 80s Atlanta punk scene. When Ruby helps her eccentric neighbor organize his religious relics, an ancient ring clamps down on her finger, possessing her with the spirit of a bloodthirsty demon. There's no exorcising it unless hundreds of people chant a spell to set Ruby free. And what's worse, the ring is a beacon of evil, drawing a monstrous mob straight to Ruby, hungry for her flesh. If Ruby can get her band back together, she has a shot of salvation. It's time for her to face the music and put her whole soul into a song, one powerful enough to raise some hell. Okay. First half of this novel, I was kind of on board. I really, really liked the opening chapter. I thought it was scary. I thought it was well done. I thought it was ominous. Cool. And then we get our, like, main character, and the plot starts to develop, and a lot of storylines and characters just kind of completely disappeared. And just kind of faded into nothing and felt very forgotten about. And as we neared the ending of the novel, that just kept kind of happening with more and more major characters. And even the ending of this novel, I felt like didn't actually satisfy me. Very cool world building, very cool use of Jewish folklore. I really did appreciate Brom's, like, usage of different styles of demons and not just our traditional, like, demon. I liked the creativity behind it. I really did enjoy his world building. It just felt to me like he wasn't fully finished with his thoughts and stories and concept by the time this actually went to print. So a lot of characters, again, just kind of have undetermined fates. The ending doesn't feel final. And I kind of hate that, like, so many characters kind of blended together or served the same roles and then just got replaced by other characters doing the exact same thing, instead of just concretely building up certain villains or heroes or allies or friends. It was just kind of a mess for me. It was 4 stars because I still did enjoy it, and it's probably the best of the books that I've read from Brom. So it was 4 stars. I did read it very, very quickly. And I really don't want to keep saying this because I kind of like really harped on it in my full-length review, but the lyrics in this, the like punk rock 80s like death metal wannabe lyrics in this are so cringy. They're so cringy. And I just couldn't take any of those scenes seriously because of that. So that is definitely like a major factor in this novel that definitely took away from it for me. But if you like the 80s metal scene, read this. Same way if you like the horror industry and history of like 80s filmmaking, definitely read like How to Make a Horror Movie and Survive. If you love like hair metal, read this. Like absolutely read this, because this is a love letter to that genre and that scene, which is like really, really cool. But I just don't think it worked for me the way that I needed to. Still a fun read. Still didn't dislike it as much as some of the other things that I've read from Brom. 4 stars. This was a fine read. Okay, and then last but not least, I read Antinora by Dory Lumpkin. This is a Twisted Retreat version. I think it's a really, really, really beautiful edition. And it's signed, so there's that. I'm going to read the back really quickly. So it says, Antinora, Dante's ninth circle of hell, reserved for traitors to their country. What really happened to Nora Willett? The religious community of Bethel, Alabama can't agree on the truth. They always said she was trouble. Later they said she was possessed. Maybe she lost her mind, killing 3 people and injuring many others. In a part confessional, part plea for Nora to come home, Nora's childhood friend Abigail Barnes tells of another girl's gruesome 18th birthday, of the time Nora may have fully revived a snake, of the intimacy of their private encounters at the lakeside, of Nora's deliverance ceremony. Where, Abigail wonders, is Nora now? In this tender and horrific debut, religious dogmatism sniffs out 2 girls whose innocent affections threaten an entire town and way of life, making one a traitor to a homeland in which only Abigail and Nora know the bittersweet truth. A homeland in which Nora can only say, "There's a snake speaking to me, Abby girl." Alright, well that summed up the entirety of this novel. Basically. This book is interesting, and the reason I didn't want to do a full-length review on it is because I just don't have that much to say about it. This was a 3-star read for me because at the end of the day, it was just fine. I felt like it needed to be one of 2 things, either cut down to just a short story or elongated into a full-length novel and not just like a 100-page novella. I felt like the character development was not there for either of our characters. I didn't feel a reason to connect or care about either of them. This concept of our unreliable narrator in Abby didn't do anything for me because what she's talking about is so absurdist and strange anyway. And there's kind of a lot of like occultism, and they're basically in a cult. They're in like a very strange religious snake cult, masquerading as like extreme Christianity in like the heart of like the mountains of Alabama. There's a lot of isolation. It feels very like puritanical, Salem witch trial hysteria based. And it's an interesting read, and it has a lot of like LGBTQ messaging, like positive reinforcement messaging in the light of religious hypocrisy, I would say. And that part of the novel is really, really strong. What's not very strong is the fact that this book really does want you to sympathize with like a kind of vicious, murderous character. And kind of just creates this weird narrative of friendship being pushed to the limits due to the corrupted actions of one of the parties in the friendship. It's kind of got a lot of questions too about like, what will you do for love and what does love mean? There's a lot of messaging and concepts and ideas in here that I think are very, very strong, but aren't fleshed out enough to make the impact that this book needs. And then by adding all of that extra information, it kind of takes away from like the general horror of this story. So I feel like if this was left a little bit more vague, it would be much scarier in a shorter form. However, if it was elongated, it would be a much more deep and compelling and kind of compassionate read. But being the length that it is, it kind of overshadows the horror with too much explanation, but doesn't explain enough to get the message that this book is trying to send across. And so I just kind of felt very like, I don't quite know where we are with this book. But it was interesting, and I did really enjoy the format of this kind of narrative retelling, of just giving the reader bits and pieces with each chapter to kind of bring you to your own conclusion, except I'm unsure of what that conclusion is. And again, we don't have enough character development of some of the major players in the story. Each chapter kind of gives you a little bit of a slice of who obviously Abby and Nora are, but then every chapter kind of introduces another character that pushes the plot forward, but those characters don't ever really come back to continue to help get the message across. So it was just fine. It was fine. It's a 3-star read. Happy I read it. Definitely not on my like must-read list. Do you think this edition is absolutely stunning? But it really was just one of those books that I was just like, this needed to be less is more, or it needed way more. The length really, I think, hurt this story, and I'm still uncertain of the Dante references. I do know that Antinora is like a minor mention in Dante's Inferno about a circle of hell, but it didn't really come into play here, and I'm still uncertain of the vagueness of the ending of what that meant or what it was implying. So I don't know. Anyway, 3 stars. Definitely check it out if you're interested. I do enjoy the themes it was trying to touch upon. I just think that it needed more development to really hit them on the head. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. Those are the 6 books that I was able to get through in the month of November. I'm really happy with my reading month. I have a really good, like, kind of range of different feelings on different novels. So I really do love when I get months like this where I have books that I really loved and other ones that I end up having very kind of probably controversial and strong opinions on. But I always love kind of challenging myself to keep reading new releases and releases that people love that I haven't ever picked up even though they came out years ago. So it's all very fun for me. So very happy with this. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.